Welcome back to the studio, everybody. This is Bobby. On deck today, I've got this 1/6 scale Gambit statue from Wicked 3D. I am super stoked to be working on this statue. It's got a lot of cool transparent fiery bits and a really cool pose. And I need a Gambit to round out my X-Men collection. So if you want to see how I've made this bad boy, stick around, because here it comes. Let's get into it. I've got my big bucket of parts here. Everything is washed and cured and ready to go. So let's get into some prep work. So over in the sanding enclosure, I got started with the plinth and just wanted to sand down any support marks. There weren't really a whole lot of support marks to sand down, so this part went pretty quick. So I went to work on the lower half of the body, removing any little supports and getting the pieces to fit together. And getting some glue on there and just getting the lower half put together into one piece. Why they chose to split the right leg where they split it is a bit of a mystery to me. It kind of runs right through his thigh there, so I knew I was going to have to come back and seal that up and do a little bit of repair work on that seam specifically. But yeah, that was a weird place to cut this thing. For the transparent fire bits, I wanted to keep it as transparent as I could, so after sanding the parts to fit, I applied a bit of a clear resin and cured it with my UV torch, just to kind of bring back some of that clarity before I put the pieces together. My hope is that it will help hide the seam in the transparency by making the contact parts as clear as I could make them. And all throughout this process, I was finding little supports hidden here and there. I still really didn't see a lot of supports until after I got the ink on this transparent piece, but I'll show you that later. So I got the transparent parts glued together, and I was pretty happy with how they fit. There wasn't a whole lot to have to hide later on, so that's good. Next, I assembled the bow staff. It came in 3 long pieces, and the keys were kind of not helpful here because the piece just kept wanting to spin around. So it took me a few seconds to kind of get everything oriented, and then I used a bit of resin to kind of seal the seam where the 2 pieces of the staff come together. While I was assembling the bow staff, I noticed there was a bit of a misprint on his pinky. His pinky finger didn't quite print out all the way, so I used some Green Stuff World putty to sculpt a new pinky finger. Just kind of pushed it in with my X-Acto, and then I used a rounded tool to just kind of stipple and smooth and shape the pinky finger back into place, and it looks really good. You could even tell that anything had happened. Just kind of lightly, basically pushing with the ball end until you get a nice smooth shape. I actually learned this technique on a road trip to what's the mountain with all the presidents? Mount Rushmore. Yeah. So on a trip to Mount Rushmore, in the little museum, they told us about how they made the faces look so smooth, and basically just like what I'm doing, except they used a jackhammer and just kind of kept tapping the putty into place and smoothed it out and gave it some shape, and it looked great. Once I got it all sealed and primed, you couldn't even tell anything had happened. To assemble the jacket, I used a 5-minute epoxy because these pieces were super heavy. They are not printed hollow, so they're solid chunks of resin, and I figured the best way to secure them to the model was to use this epoxy. So I don't know if I had a misprint or maybe I glued things out of order, but I had the hardest time getting the front of the jacket to line up after attaching the bottom. So I'm gonna just stick it on there as best I can, let it dry, and I'm gonna go back and sculpt the front of the jacket and close up the seams and stuff in just a second. So while that's drying, I want to give you a quick tip on how to hide the seams in this transparent fire. And first things first, you're going to need your UV safety goggles because we're not dummies. And we're going to use a jewelry resin. This is a little bit thicker than the regular printing resin in clear, and it's just really nice to be able to spread it into the seams without it seeping through. It's more like a gel, so it kind of holds its position a little better. You're going to need your UV torch, and basically you're just going to kind of apply a little bit along the seam, like so. Just kind of drop it right in there, right out of the bottle, and you can cure it right away. It's really nice in this particular piece of geometry because it is kind of a liquidy, kind of flowy look to it. There's a lot of chaos in here, so it's really easy to kind of hide these resin spots along the seam there. And anytime if you can't reach with the nozzle, you can use a silicone tool to kind of push the gel into the place where you want it to be, and it makes it a really easy way to deal with transparent seams. So there you go. Speaking of filling some seams, I'm going to use this plastic wood, diluted with a little bit of water, just to help it kind of flow into the smaller seams in the model on the legs and then around on the side of the jacket. And this stuff is great because it's really liquidy, so you can just apply it with a little toothpick. And finishing off the prep work on the jacket, I used some Green Stuff Whirl putty to repair the front side of the jacket, very similar to the technique I used to fix the pinky finger. I'm just kind of tapping the putty into place and kind of smoothing it out and reshaping it, and kind of blended right in. And the final step was to use a bit of resin on the seam area, just to give that one last bit of smoothness before we move on to priming and painting. With the prep of all the parts completed, the next step is to get them all mounted up on sticks and ready for priming. I like to use this Vallejo primer. It's really great stuff. It goes on easy and it dries quick and kind of flattens everything out. It's a really great primer to use, and yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's good stuff. Moving on, it's time to apply some ink to the transparent pieces. I'm going to use this purplish red and this pink to kind of give some darker kind of maroon spots in the fire and down in the low spots there, and then the pink on the higher spots. And I have no idea how this is going to turn out, so let's see what happens. I started with the pink first. That just made the most sense to me, and then I wanted to make sure to get the hand and little foot piece. There was time to put in the purplish red in the kind of lower spots and kind of give it a little bit of a gradient from the inside up and out. It looked really pretty cool. I am really happy with how it turned out. And I added a bit of a gradient to the hand as well, just to give it some really cool kind of fade up as it went away from his hand. Going to work on the upper half of the statue, I'm giving it a zenithal highlight to bring out the folds and the kind of the creases and the depth of the folds of the jacket. This will kind of show through in the saturation level of the leather brown that I'm going to be applying on the next pass. And while that was drying, I decided to give the base dry brush of the Army Painter Plate Mail Silver. I use this on all my bases that I do for the most part, just to give a consistency to my collection. I chose this at the beginning, and it's just always worked well for these style bases, so yeah, I'm just going to keep it up. And now that the ink is dry, I'm going to give it a coat of this Vallejo Premium Gloss varnish. Just a real quick spray just to seal in that goodness. So here's where it gets a little tricky. I'm brush painting the primer on the hand of the sentinel that's kind of engulfed in the pink flames here. There's really just no other way to do this except to be very careful and not hit the ink like I just did. But it comes off pretty quickly, so yeah, it's not a big deal. Just gotta make sure to keep it tidy. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this went on for quite a while, so I'm just gonna skip ahead quite a bit. So after trying a base coat on his chest, as you can see kind of over there in the upper right hand corner of the screen, I really wasn't happy with those colors, so I decided I was going to try to do some ink over chrome to give it a metallic look, and use that same pink and purplish red ink that I had used on the flames to give it some consistency. And first I decided, well, I need to try some different chromes, and it's been a minute since I've tested some new stuff, so I decided to break out my spoon tests and try a few different chrome options. After my spoon tests were complete, and after much deliberation, I decided that the Vallejo Chrome was the winner of this chrome contest. I was actually rooting for one of the other metals. As you can see, I've got a lot of miles on that bottle of Vallejo Chrome, but what can I say? I love the way it shines. It's got some nice reflectivity. It goes on well, and it's a good product overall. So the rest of the spoons get added to the spoon library, and it's time to move on to the next step. And that next step being a coat of the Vallejo Gloss Black. I want these shiny chrome pieces to be as shiny as possible, and the Gloss Black just adds a little extra richness, I think. Going back to work on the base, I needed to paint the cards with a Vallejo white primer before giving them a coat of Vallejo Off-White. I want to add some definition to the legs, so I'm going to use this Vallejo Dark Blue Gray, just kind of on the highest spots, just to really kind of get some separation in the leg muscles. So it's at this point I realized I totally forgot to switch the camera, and so just pretend like you watched me spray the dark blue gray all over the legs before going in and adding some wash in the low spots, just to kind of help blend things back in. I really like using this dark blue gray combo with black parts of the suits, because you still need to add some dimension to those parts. They're not completely fully black, so dark blue gray is a nice highlight. After that was dried, I added a gloss varnish to seal in that paint layer before masking off with some Plastitac the parts that I'm going to chrome on the lower half of the body. Tell you what, the Plastitac and plastic wrap masking combo for me is definitely the way to go. It's super fast, it comes off easy, the Plastitac is reusable. This is just, for me, it's just beats the heck out of using tape. So anyway, after that was all masked off, I applied a healthy dose of the Vallejo Metallic Chrome. And then I gave a coat to the upper torso and his neck gauntlet with the chrome. I decided I was going to hand paint the leather jacket around it anyway, so decided to not mask that off. While that chrome was drying, I went back to the details on the base. And there were a whole lot of Ace of Spades in here. Kind of suspicious, if you ask me. Going back to work on the legs now, I am adding a secondary mask to keep the chrome on the leg gauntlets, so I can add ink to the metal plates on his thighs. And I decided that his neck cowl is going to stay chrome as well, so I'm adding a layer of Plastitac to mask that off before spraying ink on the rest of the chest armor. And now the moment of truth, the ink over the chrome. Man, it looks really, really good. I'm super happy with how it turned out. It has a really cool iridescent effect that kind of shifts between maroon and pink, and I was not expecting that, and it's absolutely perfect for Gambit's armor. So with the armor complete, I used a brush to trim around the armor on the coat with a leather brown. And to finish off the jacket base coat, I used the leather brown through the airbrush to hold on to some of those highlights that I applied to the jacket earlier. Going back to work on the lower body, I applied a little bit of matte black to the soles of his boots and a panel liner to the metallic parts of the lower half, just to give a little separation in the metallic bits. Now, turning my attention back to this extremely detailed base model, I applied a little bit of Vallejo chrome to the knuckly parts of the Sentinel hand and fingers. To make the leather jacket look a little more leathery, I applied a black wash first and then a dry brush with a flat brown to bring it back to life a little bit. While that was drying, I applied a bit of panel liner to the fingers on the base and the hand, the Sentinel hand, just to give a little separation. I washed the belt and just did some trim work on some of the smaller pieces, like the hand. I went ahead and painted the glove around the fingers, and basically just kind of tidied up some of the smaller bits. And for the final details of the jacket, I used this Army Painter plate mail metal to paint the little buttons and zippers and buckle clasp things. The little buttons are kind of cool because they have like little X-Men logos in them. So after I painted them with the plate mail, I went back in with some panel liner to make those little X-Men logos stand out a little bit. And finally, it's portrait time. I like to start with a Vallejo brown rose as a base coat on the skin tone. And then I will use this Army Painter Barbarian Flesh, mainly from the top down to tint the skin just a little bit before applying the washes. And so for this portrait, I wanted to experiment a little bit. I decided to forego the blue wash, and instead of doing kind of an all-over red, I found that a lot of my skin tones have been coming out a little on the red side, so a little on the warmer side. So I wanted to just try a spot wash with the red in the lips and kind of around the eyes and kind of in the lower spots on the face. Little scars and nicks and that kind of stuff. I think this is a better way to do it, at least in my opinion. It just gives it a little bit more control, and then using a bit of yellow wash, which kind of neutralizes the red, I can go back in and add a little bit of a kind of a sun-kissed kind of look to some of the spots in the face, the higher spots. And I'm really happy with the overall tone and effect I was able to achieve. Once I was satisfied with that, I sealed it with a varnish and then masked it off so that I could go about painting his cowl with a gloss black and then with the dark blue-gray on the highlights of the black parts of the cowl, like his neck muscles and that kind of stuff. Next, I gave his hair a coat of Vallejo flat brown. And when that was done, I tidied up around his face with the cowl trim. I just kind of tightened up where that mask was hitting the skin. And I painted in his eyes with a gloss black. I gave his hair a healthy dry brush of brown sand from Vallejo. And I painted in his irises with Army Painter Vampire Red. Just kind of in the upper kind of top of his eye, since he's kind of looking kind of up a little bit. I have learned that offsetting the irises kind of gives a little bit more realism versus just kind of painting them kind of dead in the center. So paying attention to kind of where your model is looking definitely helps with the eyes, looking a little more natural. Speaking of looking natural, can't forget to add some eyebrows. I used the Vallejo flat brown and some little tiny strokes to kind of mimic the look of hair. Finishing off the portrait now, I'm using this Vallejo premium gloss to gloss the eyes and the lips. And the final step is to use this dark blue gray to make a very, very thin wash to give him a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow. Now the cool thing is you just kind of build it up as you go, so it starts off super, super light, but as you add more and more, it gets a little bit darker, and it's just a nice subtle shading effect of a 5 o'clock shadow. And with that, the portrait's complete, and we're ready for assembly. And that's my show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making this really rad model of Gambit from Wicked 3D. And if you made it this far into the video, then you would probably enjoy some of my other videos on my channel, so make sure to check those out. And hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified when I am online. I stream all my paint sessions live, and feel free to jump into the chat and ask any questions or just make some random comments. It's all good. Until next time, as always, take it easy.